Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, everyone. We would like to thank you for joining us for the 24th edition of the Annual Investment Meeting webinar series. Today, we are presenting Family Offices Virtual Discussion. My name is Karen Bazon, Investor Relations for AIM, and I'll be your MC for today. The Annual Investment Meeting is the largest investment platform in the world. An initiative of the UAE Ministry of Economy, AIM has been promoting a healthier global economy by linking investment opportunities to fast-growing economies under 6 key pillars: foreign direct investment, foreign portfolio investment, small and medium enterprise, startups, and future cities, with a special event, One Belt, One Road. We would like to thank our multilateral partner, Islamic Corporation, for the development of the private sector for sponsoring today's webinar. Just a few housekeeping notes before we get started. If you experience any issues with your audio or video during the webinar, just refresh your browser and that should take care of everything. We would suggest using Chrome, Firefox, or Opera. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box in the control panel on the right-hand side of your screen. If you like a specific question, vote for it under the question tab so we can address it to our speakers. We will address your question and at the end of the panel discussion. I would now like to introduce the moderator for today's webinar, Mr. Peter J.R. Aylwin. Mr. Peter is an international entrepreneur, investor, and family office director with over 20 years experience. He possesses a family legacy of over 50+ years in the finance and investment sectors. Mr. Peter has lived on 5 continents, including the UK and Europe, several Asian nations like India, Middle East, Africa, USA, and the Americas, Australia, Oceania, focuses on cross-border transactions. He's also a co-investment and JVs in the capital in-depth restructures, turnarounds, wealth preservation, governance, impact investment, and philanthropy. He will be joined by a panel of experts. And so, Mr. Peter, I request you to take it from here.
Thank you kindly, Karen. Well, it's my honor to chair this Family Office Virtual Roundtable webinar on behalf of AIM Congress. The purpose of this roundtable is due to there being quite a mystique and an inaccessibility to this category of private investor called family office. There's also been an interesting 10-fold increase, according to many studies, including an E&Y study, of this growing investor base. But look, just as I know we've got a very broad audience here, just to summarize what a family office is, a family office generally are a family with a net worth or investable assets in excess of $100 million. They've usually had a liquidity event in their lifetime, or they could be multi-generational inheritors. Now, there is a single family office where they're, of course, managing their own finances, and then there are multiple family offices or multi-family offices. Some of them are a couple of other single family offices that decide to join forces and leverage one another's strengths. And others, of course, are commercial family offices, where you get experienced practitioners in wealth management that often decide to manage money for a number of different families who are much better as operators and wish to outsource that function to a professional money manager. As AIM Congress are the Middle East's largest foreign direct investment conference and fully endorsed by the UAE Ministry of Economy, we're aware of the diverse parties on this webinar today. And it's my absolute pleasure to welcome the many distinguished guests from government ministries and diplomacy, trade and promotion agencies, large corporates, project owners, asset managers, entrepreneurs, all the way down to SMEs, all wishing to understand the best method of connecting with and collaborating with family offices and ultra high net worth individuals to forge long-term relationships in this growing investment sector. Now, look, there's a saying in our industry, if I've shown you 100 family offices, I've literally shown you 100 different family offices, meaning they're very, very different and have their own nuances, quite particular to one another. But to open your perspectives further and provide a roadmap and show you how selected family offices what their thoughts are leading into the future, particularly during these uncertain times. We've assembled 3 single-family offices, all with clearly diverse backgrounds, geographic focus, and unique views and investment criteria. So the topics we'll cover are what does the future hold? 2 other very, very hot topics now are direct investments and co-investments, and of course, social impact investments. But one key point you're going to want to stick around right till the end of this webinar. We've got a special insight from all of our distinguished panelists. They're going to tell you their one preferred investment in the entire world in these uncertain times going forward. But without further ado, it's my tremendous honor to introduce our distinguished panelists. Firstly, Mr. Kevin M Mcgovern, who is Chairman and CEO of McGovern Capital out of the United States, a single family office. Welcome, Kevin.
Welcome. Hi, Peter. How are you?
Brilliant. And yourself?
Very, very good. Thank you.
Excellent. And we have Asha Noor, who is Chief Investment Officer of AlTouq Group, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, a single family office. Welcome, Asha.
Thanks, Peter. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much. And Dipak Mirchandani, he's founder and chairman of the Miroche group of companies with a presence in the UK, UAE, and Africa, and principal of his own single family office. Welcome, Dipak.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody.
Excellent. Well, look, what we'll do is we'll start with the background and evolution of our different participants' family offices. Firstly, Kevin and Dipak, you're both entrepreneurs and investors. Kevin originally with a strong base in the USA that's expanded internationally. And Dipak, you started your entrepreneurial career in developing markets and now have a strong presence in the UK and the UAE. Gentlemen, in 1 to 2 minutes, like what experiences and business activities led to your decision to form a single family office? Perhaps Kevin, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Peter. First of all, we've done quite a bit of business around the globe in about 80 countries. We specialize in consumer technologies. 6 of the companies that we founded have become world or category leaders. So we've had a pretty diverse experience, particularly in the consumer segment. We find that we prefer much more to be direct because it allows us to mentor management in a direct way. We prefer not to go through the institutional way of investing because we can be a little bit more hands-on. We have an expression, nose in, hands out, until any adversity hits, and then maybe we get our hands in a little bit. And we also find that we like to invest in places where our team has the most strength. And often if you invest in a portfolio, it's not in necessarily the areas where your strength is. And we prefer to stay within our knitting.
Brilliant. And Dipak?
Well, it's a similar story with Kevin's actually. As an entrepreneur, we like to work with other entrepreneurs, other businesses, real businesses, rather than go the institutional way or invest in financial instruments. And being in London, there's a really very good dynamic ecosystem of advisors, lawyers, managers, events, family office events. So it was a natural transition for us to start up a family office and make investments, a lot of times directly or co-invest with other entrepreneurs or other companies.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. And Asha, your background prior to becoming Chief Investment Officer was with large financial institutions, and you played a pivotal role in building and developing AlTouq Group's investment divisions. In about sort of 1 to 2 minutes, from a personal view, what interested and motivated you to make that transition from institutional to family office? And what's been your focus and objectives since making the move?
Sure. So I'm based in Riyadh for the past 2 decades, and of those 11 years, I've been working as CFO and CIO for this fantastic Saudi Arabian single family office, the AlTouq Group, that has a global investment outlook and an investment mandate. In the past, I worked for PwC, and Morgan Stanley as well. And I now sit on the board of a few companies in the region and have a few certifications in trusts and estate planning and family governance as well. But to your point about making the move from institution to family office, I think it all starts with getting an offer you can't refuse. Otherwise, people in my situation, working for the likes of Morgan Stanley, they might be quite happy to naively cling on to those branded financial institutions, little realizing that even those bulge bracket top tier banks or even mid tier or boutique firms or service providers, they're mostly getting their names on the tombstones, the businesses and the deal flows, thanks to the family businesses, thanks to the family offices. So for me, I think more than a decade back, it was a massive leap of faith leaving Morgan Stanley, but I was convinced that the family office that I was moving to was mature, was sophisticated in what it had at that point in time, what it wished to secure going forward. And so hats off to their vision, but I guess I was spot on as well. Nonetheless, I think it was a lot of hard work in the early days, bringing the group's various functions to an institutional level, areas like back office, HR, IT, operations, compliance, legal, even investment due diligence processes that we had, or now that we have. It's to a level where I think I can claim that it's quite institutionalized, it's slick, it's efficient, and most of all, it's kind of on an autopilot, which ideally it should be. But I guess to conclude, I think the tailpiece is once you are in a family business or a family office world, I think there is no going back, for better or for worse.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. Okay, and now just to take our audiences into sort of the heart of the discussion, we're going to cover firstly the essence of your family's present investment philosophy, and particularly what does the future hold, particularly during these uncertain times. Now, presently, what are the key investment categories, sectors, or assets of focus which comprise your investment portfolios presently? And sort of what is that decision-making process, the risk profile, the returns you're targeting? Kevin?
Well, first of all, we have a mantra inside of our organization, and we own the trademark: catch the current, make the wave. And so we really don't get involved in too many boring things. We try to be 2 to 3 years ahead of our time. So nowadays it's 2 or 3 months. The three categories that really would summarize what we're involved in is healthcare, wellness, and sports and entertainment. In healthcare, we're now doing home health care for the masses through video at home. And we're involved in telemedicine, telemarketing, et cetera. And we're doing that, we want to be a pioneer in that area. Number two, we're very much involved in clean water systems, have been for 20 years now. It's my passion totally. Three, solving the vascular disease issue. We are backing, and I'm on the board of a company that has a drug for a remedy. Four, audio, hearing. Billions of people now have hearing problems, and we're involved in proprietary technologies in that area. And lastly is skincare, which is our biggest business. We own the patents on what's called alpha hydroxy acids. In wellness, we're a pioneer in cold brew coffee through my son. It was his idea. He's the foodie in the group. We're involved in plant-based foods, and we're also involved in plant accelerators, mitigation of diseases for coffee, olives, and citrus. Lastly, in sports and entertainment, we're investment now over 4 or 5 years now in esports. We have several investments in esports, and we think that's really going well. I have a thing about boxing. I like it, and so I'm involved in the media of that just for fun. We're involved in the movie business going forward, the digital side of it. And basically, we just like to get into things that we think are futuristic, and most of all, helping people to be healthy and also enjoy their environment.
And what are the general returns you're targeting?
We've been very fortunate. We've never had a bankrupt company. Right now, we probably have about 30 companies that are involved in our portfolio, and you know, we've done very well. Skincare is well over 100 times return, and Sobe Beverages, some people have heard of it. It's the fastest growing beverage company ever in the United States. I was fortunate to be one of the founders. That was a 60-time return for our passive investors. But you know, generally we like to, we're targeting 5 to 10 times, and we've been successful doing that in many companies. Of course, you have some that are just dying on the vine, and you're hoping like heck that they don't die, and you're fortifying them and convincing your management to really change to adjust to the times. I like to talk about people that are adversity adjusters. that have the ability to make the pivot and make decisions. Those are the people that I invest in. The people who have the toughness of mind and the ability to make decisions quickly when struck by adversity or opportunity.
Thank you, Kevin. Okay, and Dipak, I mean, what are some key categories, sectors, and assets of focus that comprise your portfolio? And what's your decision-making process, risk profile, and sort of the returns you're targeting?
Well, our philosophy is long-term because, as you know, as a family office, we think intergenerational. So we can afford to take those long-term risks on companies, investors, and entrepreneurs. We like fintech, so we've made investments in fintech, financial services, challenger banks here in the UK. We've made investments in education and entertainment in Korea. So K-pop is a big, is making its, it's going worldwide now. We made investments in Korean pop. We like agriculture. We like food processing, and we like to back entrepreneurs who again think outside the box, who can, they can start a company with one vision, and by the time the company is up and running, it could be a completely different company because they're changing with the circumstances. And the returns are, we look at a 5 to 10 times return, and again, you're making direct investments, so you're backing, you need to back the right person.
Yeah. And Asha, you see a lot of investments per year and come across many different asset managers. What are you seeking as a family office investor, and how do you feel that's different from the days within an institution or to other private investors? You'll have to unmute yourself, Asha.
Yeah, okay, thanks. To your point about investment philosophy, let me start with that. What is our investment philosophy? And I think it's as simple as not losing money. We don't have a herd mindset, so we don't really chase deals that are the flavor of the month. We develop our own convictions. If we feel that there's a deal or a manager that's kind of hard to access, we'd be happy to let it go. We just focus on our strengths. We understand that debt can juice up the returns, but we don't over leverage. We try to keep liquid assets, and we try to secure, I think, a broad-based consensus within the investment committee while rebalancing our portfolio on an ongoing basis. And as a single family office, we are our portfolio spans the traditional and alternative asset classes. So we are into private equity, we are into public equity, hedge funds, structured products, real estate, direct investments, obviously, and venture too. So I think with having everything in the mix, what really keeps us busy is not about chasing returns or chasing managers. It's more about rebalancing according to our needs, our tastes, our outlook, our risk appetite, our returns appetite, which does change from time to time. So yeah, is there any part of the question that I did not address as yet?
No, you pretty much covered it. However, just to maybe elaborate upon that, is there a specific sort of return you're targeting and risk profile, risk weighting, which you've come from a more sophisticated institutional side? Maybe you could elaborate upon how you put those in place for your family office.
Look, there was a time when I could have given you an IRR number, I could have given you a benchmark, but in recent times, we have come to realize the difference between absolute returns and relative returns. So you can't really, so if the S&P is down 50% and your portfolio is down 30%, you can't really eat those negative 30% returns. So we have done away with those benchmarks as such, although we do reference them to kind of see how our performance is. But at the end of the day, it's about absolute returns for us.
Okay. And gentlemen, given the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, the financial crisis we're in, recent volatility in oil prices, real estate markets softening in certain markets, and many other factors, what are your perspectives on the future trends that will impact investment strategies of family offices and your investment strategy in the coming 1 to 3 years? Start with you, Kevin. And we could limit it to 1 minute if possible.
Early February, I gave a talk at a family office conference up in Saudi, up in King Abdullah Economic City. And I said, food, energy, and water, we will grow it, consume it, and dispose of it in our own homes in the future. Well, that future is now. And healthcare, business, etc. It's now internet everywhere and in your home. And unfortunately, as far as I'm concerned, being a global citizen, we see business decoupling now taking place, where we're going to see manufacturing return to local sourcing as an emphasis. So that I think that's a shame, but that will be it. And I also see that we may be wearing bio badges to identify what state of health that we're in. I know that in China, they have special software on their phones that are identifying the status that they are, but I do see that as part of the future. So COVID is going to have a distinct impact on us. 3 words: private, virtual, and survival.
And Dipak, so how is your investment strategy now for the coming 1 to 3 years, given the financial crisis and COVID pandemic?
Technology and food. These are 2 sectors where we focus on. And technology, it's quite a broad church. There's fintech, AI, big data, robotics, mobility. There's so many different sectors that you can invest in technology. And food, the population's growing. And so food processing, food technology, agriculture, the sectors we would look forward to, over the long term.
Brilliant. And Asher, in about 1 minute.
So look, Peter, as you know, that the outsized returns environment is just dissipating fast in the more well-known asset classes or the traditional opportunities. So I think now the trend that will continue, and this means a significant impact on asset allocation mindset going forward, is that we'll see more secondary market opportunities coming up, secondary markets opening up to allow for monetization and for better liquidity events. Families would be chasing hard on fees or fee reduction if they can't really get the yield enhancement. And I think more single family offices and multifamily offices would evolve. And I think the most important thing is people have started realizing that investing in their own backyard might be a more safer approach regardless of the sector. The geographical allocation I'm talking about might be a more safer approach with all this spike in nationalism, borders being replaced with walls, supply chains being disrupted or fragmented. And so investing in the backyard. And just to conclude, I think there's also this on the asset allocation mindset. I think there's been this relentless chase of making these offshore jurisdictions kind of taboo in every conversation. So I'm seeing a lot of shift in investment strategies is already underway.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And what role has technology played in this process to date? What do you foresee as the role of technological advancement in directing your investment allocations into the future? Perhaps, Kevin, I'll put that one to you.
Technology has now become the individual, and it's now, it basically is here now. This is a perfect example, is this meeting. And, people literally are asking me now, is it better to meet people by Zoom or personally? Frankly, I tell them it depends on the purpose. But technology now is, as I said, healthcare is an area that we want to be a pioneer in home healthcare, where literally you will do your diagnosis with a doctor on your TV. And that's today, that's not tomorrow. We're working on it right now with some major media stations in the US and hoping to grow out in global. So you're going to see your media be very much part of everything you're doing, and the internet part of everything you're doing. Everything's going to be virtual. We're working also with virtual reality a little bit because you're going to be shopping. Retail is going to be governed by virtual reality. I'm going to get my suit, fitted on my screen. And so technology is just everywhere.
Yeah. Okay. And Dipak, are there any other key points or burning perspectives you'd like to share? Or
technology again is a key. It's a core investment theme for us, and what we really like, what we like now in the post-COVID era is e-commerce is doing really well. And there are great opportunities there. And battery technology, because mobility is, it's turning electric. And there are a lot of different companies, people, parts of the world looking at batteries. And there's, and so, to make those batteries, you've got to have the minerals. So we like lithium and graphite. There's some real good lithium mining happening now in Europe, graphite in Canada. So these are things that will become, there's going to be a shortage of lithium and graphite in the next 5 years. So that's, you've got to look at it now, so that, when you have that accelerated battery, the needs for that. And again, for energy, home energy, for solar power, if you can back up that solar on batteries. So we're talking not just batteries for cars, but mobility, but the big scale batteries that, I think Tesla has done something in Australia with,
So in summary, Dipak,
with a massive battery. They put up a big array there for Australia. So, that's another side that, we need to look at battery technology.
Peter, can I add one thing about Dipak's statement?
yeah, in
Deepak,
30 seconds.
You're so right on. We're looking at one opportunity with great management, great idea, et cetera. We did our due diligence. We realized there's only one sole source, and that sole source may be difficult. And it's just so important nowadays to look at that source of the technology and to figure out whether there's capacity and whether there's, diversity. Big deal.
Brilliant. Okay. Now we're going to cover now to one of the hottest topics discussed but often misunderstood in the family office segment, and that's direct investments and co-investments. Asset managers, family offices are all looking at this very, very, very much in depth. Some families have a growing preference for collaborating together with one another, or direct principals in an investment, rather than necessarily going to an advisor, going to a broker, going to a manager, should they feel they can obtain a greater value in doing so directly. However, when it comes to execution, several family offices have had differing levels of success. And our panelists will obviously walk you through this in a moment. Many attribute this to institutions and funds with greater financial capacity now moving into the space and investments category of where a family office would normally invest. Some families have difficulty sourcing investments which meet their defined criteria, and also the difficulty of finding the right co-investment partners and aligning their interests. So look, as sort of a question on this, when considering a direct investment or co-investment, what is the specific criteria, the minimum and maximum deal size you prefer, and the sort of the decision-making process around this? Asha, I'll put that one to you.
Oh, sure. I thought it was going to be Kevin, so I had some chance to pick up some points from him. But okay, so I'll go. Well, Peter, I think this is too precise a question, and for precisely that reason, I'm going to shy away from giving a precise answer. The answer that I honestly dislike is actually the most relevant answer, which is it depends. But I know you wouldn't want me to stop at just it depends, so let me try and take a stab at it. We like to do transactions that move the needle for us. We like to lead transactions if it makes sense. We like to sit on the cap table wherever it's possible. We like to be actively involved where we can add value, but we are also receptive to the needs of a deal that's being cobbled together and where we need to take a passive role. And if it makes sense, we'll do that. So, so whether it's direct or co-investments, it's all about a deal that makes sense for us.
Okay, Dipak, what's your decision-making process and preferred structure in a direct investment or a co-investment?
In direct, the first thing we look at is the founder. The person or the team has to be top-notch. They need to think on a worldwide, global perspective. It's not just about their local markets. And our preference actually is to not take a majority stake. We prefer to not seek board positions. We want to be a minority investor when you take a board seat, you're providing oversight. We want to be on the other side. We want to be on the side of the entrepreneur. So we want to be supportive. We want to play an advisory role and help them through that journey of building the company. And we leave it to, so you need to back the right founders and, believe in their vision and their view of where they want to take the company. So, you don't want to tread on their toes.
Of course. And I'm sure there's many entrepreneurs tuning in now that are going to be rushing to try and get in touch with you because it's that you'd like to support the entrepreneur. And ladies and gentlemen, I can personally attest to this. Kevin, your thoughts on what you like as far as direct and co-investment, your decision-making process, the deal size and preferred structure?
We like it to be disruptive. And the verb we like is leapfrog. It's got to leapfrog into something that adds a new dimension. The upside market has to be significant and global. Our relationships are global, and we have to have something that can cross boundaries. The knowledgeable management, you both have covered that. But, remember the following. Every early stage business, in my opinion, because we go in early, has to have a CPO. And most people don't know what the heck I'm talking about. I teach at Cornell and Stanford, and people don't know what I mean by that. CPO, Chief Passion Officer, got to have him or her. That person's got to exist early stage, and then they've got to usually leave the company at some point in time. But just remember, your outside guy, your Chief Passion Officers need to be complemented by an inside person. I always want to meet that inside person because they're going to count your pennies, and you want to make sure that you have those qualities. Lastly, they have to understand in consumer products particularly, and technology is just as advanced in consumer products as anything else. You also have to have distribution, and people have to have the relationships to understand how to go to market and where they're going and how they grow. And I tell people the three key elements in a consumer product, the three key words are distribution, distribution, and distribution at the end of the day. And so our relationships around the world help our entrepreneurs distribute their products in the Middle East, Asia, et cetera. And we think that's really a key, and that's what we bring to their table.
And Asha, where for you do you find that the highest quality deal flow comes from generally? The sources of deal flow that come to you. Are you just attracting it on your name only, or do you have to actively look for it? And if so, how do you do that?
Sure. So the most high quality deal flow has come to me through conversations. It has worked wonders in the past, and I have no doubt that's going to continue to work for me over and over again. This unsolicited deal flow is usually honestly trash because they have no clue as to what is our preferred flavor, what is our current portfolio mix, what is our outlook. So yeah, it's all about private networking that has usually yielded really high quality deal for us. But again, we are also blessed with some excellent time-tested managers who over the decades have understood us well, and they really bring us curated stuff, and we trust them for that. Yeah.
Dipak, is there any sort of specific test or question or way you like to test the entrepreneur? Because you're very much relationship driven on this, Dipak. Is there a specific criteria or intuition or test that you like to implement on a entrepreneur that indicates to you that's my guy or that's the lady I'd like to lead this company and I would put my money with them?
Well, we wouldn't. Most times we wouldn't back a first-time entrepreneur. So they need to show a successful story behind them, and again, they need to have a passion for what they're doing, and they need to be prescient enough to be able to steer their company to through thick and thin. With what's happening right now with COVID, the people that we backed, nothing's really affecting them. They've been able to refocus their energies and get back on top. Some have taken advantage of the situation. So for us, it's the person and how comfortable you feel with, because it's a very, very long-term relationship that you have to build with the entrepreneur. So you got to believe in them. If you don't believe in them, just don't do it. It's, belief has to be either 100% or zero. There's no middle ground.
Yeah, and that's a perfect example for our audience because and why some are looking to target this investor category is they are longer-term investors. Some family offices don't have the pressure of, say, a funds manager of having to quickly get a return within a certain period of time. And Kevin, we'll move on in a moment, but just wanted to ask: is there anything as far as direct investments and co-investments you think? And you go to a lot of conferences and hear a lot of perspectives. Do you think there's anything missing from the conversation? Like, what important subject matter, if you had to pass on one or two key points that you feel you'd like to be brought up in these conversations about family office in direct and co-investment?
I just like to mention that successful entrepreneurs, in my opinion, have all the qualities Dipak mentioned, I'm sure, mental toughness, etc. The question I try to get around to when I'm meeting entrepreneurs and or hiring people for something where do they have a fear of the unknown? Because entrepreneurs face the unknown every day, and you're on thin ice. Early stage companies, you make them bad decision, you may just go under. You don't have the benefit of a big balance sheet, etc. So I try to figure out whether that person is decisive and fear of the unknown. May sound like a little, but that's the type of person I want to back.
Mm-hmm. Any final words, Asher? Or are you good?
So you're talking about the question was what's missing in the conversation. I believe that was the question, right? Yes. Well, I think there's quite a few things that are missing in the conversation. People are not talking about taxation. They're not talking about other liabilities. They're not talking about jurisdictions. They're not talking about domiciles. They're not talking about those overly complex corporate structures that are being proposed. People seem to be obsessed with the term sheet. They seem to be obsessed with the returns that are proposed on the term sheet. They are just keeping an eye out for the first closing or the second closing. So I prefer to look at, or I hope that conversations also pivot towards looking at transactions with an exit in mind as well. I have nothing against evergreen structures, but yeah, to your point about what's missing in the conversation, there's a lot that's missing.
Hey, Peter, also unrealistic valuations on the part of those entrepreneurs. All of us face that. Don't start out too high. You gotta climb a ladder. And don't, if you're too high, you may have to go low and your investors will not be happy. Go off to a reasonable evaluation and grow it. Hopefully your current investors are your long-term investors.
Yeah, and as far as entrepreneurship is concerned, and of course internationalization, you can obviously see that arbitrage. An example I saw is one company in a European country where it was founded. They were looking at 30 million valuation. They came to UK and got a 50 million valuation. Same company then went and looked at 150 plus valuation in the US. So it goes to show that there's that arbitrage there. Dipak, final words, and then we'll move on to the next subject.
When you're talking to an entrepreneur, when they pitch, they'll come up with fantastic, spreadsheets, financial statements, just tear it all up. And you've got to go with your gut, and you got to look at, what realistically that company can achieve, because everybody overestimates themselves.
Indeed. And as far as our social impact investments are concerned, this is another hot topic. They're a growing segment amongst individuals, family offices, and at an institutional level. The ESG, or environmental, social, and corporate governance aspects, are central factors in measuring sustainability and societal impact in an investment, and are now playing a key role in decision-making process in family offices and institutions. Also, John Elkington in the 90s coined the phrase triple bottom line, referring to social, environmental, and financial. Now, this is a particularly hot topic as well amongst next generation children of ultra wealthy families and inheritors. One study discusses how there's going to be a transfer of 30 trillion from one generation to the other. And another one even says as much as 60 trillion plus from one generation to another. So look, gentlemen, let's completely separate philanthropy for a moment from the discussion and just focus on social impact as an investment. Each of you have separate investment requirements, are being approached with many proposals daily. particularly those now emphasizing social impact, ESG, triple bottom line, and so on and so forth. Asha, why don't we start with you? Like, what are your thoughts on the present state of the market of social impact investments and what's being presented to family offices as investment opportunities?
So look, Peter, right now, what we're seeing is that there is a lot of projects that are just being slapped with an ESG sticker and rolled out to family offices. So I'm a bit wary for now until we really have a more robust or standardized way of measuring social impact, a more robust benchmark. And just like if we go maybe 10 years back, CSR started out as more of a marketing or a PR stunt or a more tax positive tool, but it has now gained genuine application, genuine utility. So I'm waiting for social impact investments to somehow gain that same credence, but it's unlikely that's going to be happening overnight.
Yeah, and Kevin, you see a lot of this obviously in the United States. I mean, what do you think is the present state of social impact investments internationally from your view?
I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you that my passion is clean water. We make filters. We created the pure filter for Procter & Gamble, blah, blah, blah. And we've worked all over the world. And I'm a little bit cynical about ESG right now. Unfortunately, I'll be the maverick in here. There's too much talk and not enough action. A few years ago at the Opal conference, I gave a talk and I said, you know, a lot of people aren't doing the due diligence they should be on ESG. You got to go out in the field. You got to see if that well's working. You got to see if the people are really getting what they say getting done, whether it's philanthropy. I'm not cutting back to philanthropy, but ESG. And unfortunately, I just think that there's too much words and people are not in the trenches understanding what's truly needed by the people. You need efficiency and you need effectiveness. And I think you got to intersperse some economic motivation inside of ESG to make it truly effective.
Yeah. And Dipak, what are your thoughts on the present state of the market of social impact?
Again, to me, ESG is just a buzzword that's being bandied about by fund managers and institutions to hoover in the money. ESG actually should be a core part of all investments. It's a no-brainer. ESG should be, all companies should have that as, because the bottom line is if you do the social impact, if you're environmentally friendly and you do good. I mean, companies are there to do good at the end of the day, let's not forget. And so for me, I don't like the term that everybody, I'm cynical about it. Again, like Kevin says, you need to see what's really happening on the ground. For us, all our investments, all our operating companies, ESG is a core part of it. So, I've talked about it in the past with you, Peter, and so sometimes I laugh at people when they talk about, when they write a little essay on their prospectus or whatever, talking about ESG. It's just words.
Now, you're a perfect example, Dipak, of someone that have always been following that style of investment anyway in assessing that investment opportunity. It's now just essentially started to become more of a buzzword. It's also as well now a category of alternative investment that exists, but you've been doing it for decades. Okay, what role do you feel the next generation family members play in the decision-making process in social impact investments? And do they have the freedom and encouragement to develop those interests and ventures? Asha?
Well, next gen will drive this theme forward. They don't ask for freedom or flexibility. They don't need to be encouraged. They are on top of this from more academic aspect because it's being taught in schools and colleges as well. But the fact that they're so well connected on the social media, they are taking ownership, and we are seeing this on the streets, on online platforms. And next gen, when they sit in the IC, they are able to argue competently. They present a solid and valid case, so they inspire, they lead, and I'm sure in course they'll be able to steer the IC decisions towards more social impact investments.
And gentlemen, 30 seconds each on this one, because it's important. So it helps capture things for our very diverse audience. What do you feel government agencies, project owners, entrepreneurs, asset managers, etc., need to do to capture your attention or that of other family offices when presenting a social impact investment to your office or to the family office market in general? Dipak, 30 seconds.
Again, it's got to be real. I don't want to listen to words and well-written prose. You need to see what's really happening. You need to look under the rug, under the carpet.
Kevin, in 30 seconds.
Kick the tires, as I said. I think we have a COVID cutback crisis, particularly will affect ESG, and I worry about that. What an opportunity for all generations to work together. And I think family offices need to, the senior and the second and third generations, that's where they should be working together in helping the globe, because we have so many macro issues, not the least of which is environmental.
Asha, and what do government agencies, project owners, entrepreneurs, etc., need to do to capture your attention? Very briefly.
The social impact or the social impact compliant deal needs to evidence returns that are at least at par, if not more, to capture my attention.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. Okay, now we're going to move on to some Q&A. So we'll answer some questions for now, and then we'll get to our final bonus segment. So I'll look at what we've got here. Okay, firstly, do you need an in-depth domain knowledge in any business before investing? Gentlemen, who wants to take that one? Kevin?
No.
You want to go, Dipak? Go ahead.
Yeah, no, you don't need an in-depth knowledge. You can learn. It's for the person who's pitching you, for them to educate you, and then you need to be convinced that it's the right thing.
You know what? I always use a word, Dipak, that I learned at my colleagues at some of the technical schools, MIT, et cetera. You got to iterate. So I listen to my entrepreneur, my prospective candidate, investor, and then I go to a couple other gurus. And I want to hear what they have to say. And then I'll compare X, Y, and Z. And if there's some consistency there with the entrepreneur that I want to invest in, then I'm going to go ahead. If not, then I'm going to stop cold and make sure that I understand why there is not an inconsistency. I love that word, iterate. My scientific buddies love it even more. But use that word all over the world. Anytime you go in a lab, any place, and use the word iterate, they say, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about.
Okay, next question. What are your favorite books or sources to learn about on new trends? Maybe Asha, if there are any books on trends that you like.
I think there are quite a few online resources. I'm a subscriber to Bloomberg. I'm a subscriber to The Economist. And whenever new books come out, I do kind of read their blurb, if not the entire thing, to get a sense as to what are the topics that are being discussed. As long as you know what are the new topics out there, you can always find adequate resources online.
Gentlemen, any favorite books on trends?
Tom Friedman, I always love his books, and I always find he seems to capture the technological side and explain it beautifully. So thanks for being late is actually, a little bit old book now. It's about a year old. Great book, isn't it? Terrible title, Tom Friedman, if you were on, because people don't realize what a great technological book it is, but a great read. And
even his book, The World is Flat. That's a great book.
Absolutely. Too. One of the pioneering books. Mm-hmm. And The Fortune to be Made at the Bottom of the Pyramid, my good friend Stu Hart and C.K. Prowlett, God rest his soul, they were real pioneers in investing in the developing countries. I think that's a really good reader.
Yeah. And okay. And when you identify and hire your management team, how do you go about this? Is it word of mouth, or do you special industry connections, or is it things like LinkedIn? I'll get one of you take that. Maybe Asha?
Sorry, I didn't get the question.
When you're hiring management, an identified team, do you use word of mouth, LinkedIn? What are your sources of doing it?
Look, we just park on the side if it's unsolicited deal flow. So we are the ones actually chasing managers and trying to find the best of the breed. So they usually come to us either through our existing bankers or other managers that we have hired for that very purpose. And then we kind of reference them against some of the online resources that are available. So it's largely word of mouth and other referrals, instead of just being an isolated somebody trying to get a foot in the door.
Yeah, and as far as ticket size of investments are concerned, so a question here about is 50 million or 100 million too much? Is this beyond a family office investment capacity? Gentlemen, do you feel that that's the case?
Yeah.
That's more institutional, in my opinion.
Yeah, generally there's a handful of large family offices that may look at this, but generally it's hovering into that institutional area.
Maybe some very large American ones.
Okay, what's the most effective way to reach family offices to present projects and investment opportunities other than personal connections? Kevin?
You know, I do go to conferences, and we also have our individual meetings and picnics and things like that, but it's networking. And quite frankly, it's just as active, if not more active right now through podcasts. And I enjoy them, speaking as well as listening. You know, 2 ears, listen more than you speak.
And Kevin, I've got another one directed directly to you. How do you obtain the information about the future developments, investments, and opportunities that assist you in determining if they are beneficial and successful?
Partially technological, reading books and listening to people, and partially you just develop an instinct for it. And you say, okay, what's next? Because I'm not really concerned about what's happening today as much as I am what the challenges of today are going to create for the solutions of tomorrow.
Yeah. Another one, and again, I could probably answer
by the way,
this.
students, I ask my students what's happening. One of the best things you can do is teach. I teach all over the world, Saudi, etc. I love Singapore. I love teaching because the students give you a lot of ideas.
I can imagine, exactly, especially with that the millennials, their connection to technology.
Totally.
And
it's great. Listen to them.
Oh, indeed. I've got some of my best information from people in their mid-20s.
Yeah, I learned a lot from them.
Why have family office investments gained relevance and importance over the years? What has contributed to this change, do you think? Asha, you've come from institutional to family office, so maybe I'll put that one to you.
I think it was inevitable that at some point in time, you needed some kind of institutions that don't really have a conflict of interest, that are not pushing the product. They are creating a market of their own. So family offices either inherit money, they stumble across wealth, they create wealth out of thin air, but the bottom line is they have the wealth and they are agnostic when it comes to managers or sectors or geographies. They're just looking for the best of the breed. So that's why I think family offices have mushroomed.
Okay, and how do you assess a sector which you're not familiar with before investing? Dipak?
Well, you've got to talk to the experts after you've listened to the pitch. You talk to other people. You look at if there's a co-investment opportunity there, whether you can form a syndicate with other like-minded people. So the different ways of looking at it.
Yeah, and Kevin, there's one specifically for you. How has the COVID-19 situation affected your investments in sport and entertainment?
Demanded creativity. I'm very much into audiences, how to review those, how to get media, TV involved. And it's really, really challenging. But the audience factor is a big deal. Esports is booming, as you know, and we're just increasing our investments in that area. In-home sports and viewing sports and activity and interactivity is a big deal in sports. But it's challenging, no doubt about it. The audience, though, that's a big factor right now.
Indeed. Well, look, this is a big thank you to all of our audience who have tuned in for this hour. And now we've got what I always consider one of my highlights. One of my passions is meeting people from diverse backgrounds that have a world-class level of expertise and picking their brain. But then when you get down to the exact one thing that they would recommend. And so as a special insight, just for our audience here at AIM Congress webinar, and this is to my audience, okay, and rather my panelist here, if you had to pick one or maximum two investments, any sector, any geographic location in the world, what would that be and why? Dipak?
Well, you know, the world, I'm going to quote a few numbers first. The world population is going to grow by about another 2 billion by 2050. And 2/3 of that population growth is going to take place in Africa. And there's another number, 60% of the arable land in the world is in Africa. but it's underutilized, underinvested, and people people need to eat. So for me, it's agriculture, food processing, and the food consumer food products in Africa. They need the technology, they need the employment, they need food security, they need the export dollars. It's a big virtuous cycle. So for me, Africa is going to become the next agricultural powerhouse, like South Africa, South America.
Indeed.
Africa
Okay.
is the next one.
Usher, what is your one, maximum two hot picks? Any industry, any geographic location, and why?
Sure. Love the question, Peter. I think in 2 words, I can tell you something that is not ordinarily on the radar of investors, and maybe other than us panelists, maybe only a handful on this call might have even heard of it, let alone consider it as a viable investment opportunity. That investment is life settlements. You can Google it up, you can understand this more, and you'd be surprised that if you get this right, the IRRs on this are just absolutely insane, and it's just completely uncorrelated to the rest of the stuff that you would have in your portfolio. My caveat here is that I'm not here to give any investment advice. Maybe I'm not even qualified to do so. And I'm just sharing something which I believe that the audience might want to follow up on and research this more. So life settlements. But just one last point. But please do remember that this is an investment that, while it can give you insane IRRs and returns, it does not just go down to 0. It can go into a -100 as well. So just handle it with care. Life settlements.
Kevin, in about 45 seconds, your one, maximum two investments.
Vascular systems. We're investors, and I'm on the board of a company that it will be the first drug to help vascular systems, diabetes, etc. $2 trillion industry with no drugs. We're also involved in a company that does that same thing with plants, disease mitigation, and accelerating growth. It enhances the vascular system and increases the immune system, both in humans, that's Rev and drug, and in plants, zero gravity. So we're into vascular systems and curing those and building immunology, which is, of course, very, very hot right now.
Brilliant. Well, we've had some tremendous, insightful thoughts just here. I don't know about you, ladies and gentlemen, on the webinar, but I can't wait to be diving deeper into these opportunities from these 3 experts from very, very diverse international backgrounds. So look, now this is our conclusion. But in summary, you've gained some very unique perspectives from 3 highly diverse family offices. We've gained greater insight into what does the future hold, direct investments and co-investments, social impact investments, and of course that one unique hot tip and insight from each of our experts here. We strongly encourage interactivity and collaboration, which has made AIM Congress so successful over the years. Now, I'd love to have done this in person on stage with you all and met a lot of the people, but the next best thing is through webinars such as this. Hence, if any people in the cyber world, our audience, have any questions, you're most welcome to reach out to AIM directly via their website or social media. Myself via LinkedIn at Peter J.R. Aylwin, that's Aylwin. Email is inquiries with an ENQUIRIES at aetosinvestments.com, that's AETOS investments.com, or our website, which is being revamped at aetosinvestments.com, or our distinguished panelists via their social media, some of which of their details were included when you registered. So I'd love to thank my 3 distinguished panelists, AIM Congress, and particularly our conference producer, Prashant, for his dedication and commitment for kindly making this amazing and engaging family office virtual roundtable possible. Thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, I wish you great prosperity, success and happiness, and of course, safety during these uncertain times, and a most exciting rest of the day. Prashant, I'll leave it over to you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Peter, Mr. Dipak, Mr. Kevin, and Mr. Asher, our panel of experts, for joining us today and for taking time from your schedule and sharing your thoughts and perspective with us. I would like to thank once again our multilateral partner, Islamic Corporation, for the development of the private sector for sponsoring today's webinar. I would also like to thank our audience for joining us and sharing their questions. The link to today's webinar video will be sent to you via email. We're also conducting a short survey to get your feedback on today's webinar, and the link to the survey will be shared with you via the chat and via email. To register for our next webinar schedule for the 14th of July 2020, please visit our website, www.aimcongress.com/webinars. Also follow us on our social media channels to keep yourself updated. And thank you all once again. We look forward to seeing you. That's tomorrow, 14th of July. Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.